There was a man sitting in the third row that night. A man who didn't come for music or joy or unity. He came with a mission he believed would define him. His name was Derek Mitchell, and for 3 full weeks he had planned one purpose: to destroy Bob Marley. He had prepared signs, memorized lines, and placed 5 of his friends throughout the arena like soldiers. In his mind, Bob Marley wasn't just a musician. He was a threat, a symbol of everything Derek believed should be wiped out. He didn't come to listen. He came to strike. But on June 7, 1979, inside the Oakland Coliseum arena, something happened that Derek Mitchell never expected. Something so profound, so disarming, so world-shaking, that 20 years later he would stand in front of a church congregation and confess with tears in his eyes, "The night I tried to destroy Bob Marley was the night Bob Marley saved my soul." Derek's journey to that seat began decades before. He grew up in rural Oregon, in a home where fear was taught as truth and prejudice was passed down like inheritance. His father, a logger, believed the world had an order that must never be disturbed. He believed races should not mix, believed cultures should be kept apart, believed unity was a danger. Derek grew up swallowing these ideas whole. By the age of 20, he had joined a white supremacist group. By 25, he had been arrested twice for violent assaults at civil rights rallies. Hatred had become both his weapon and his shelter. His group's leader once told him, "If you want impact, don't attack ordinary people. Attack their heroes." And Bob Marley, this black man singing about love, unity, rebellion, peace, breaking borders, breaking barriers. That man was the perfect enemy. Marley's music was spreading into white communities. College students were growing dreadlocks. Fans from every race were singing together. To Derek, it felt like his worldview was being erased by a guitar and a microphone. So Derek and his group bought tickets to Marley's concert. The plan was simple: wait until Bob was mid-performance, then create a public disruption with flags and signs, rush the stage, and let the media feast on the chaos. They didn't want to change Marley's mind. They wanted to humiliate him. They wanted their message of division to echo louder than Marley's message of unity. But Derek overlooked one detail. To get close enough to reach the stage, he had to arrive early, which meant he sat in the third row for nearly 2 hours before the show began, surrounded by Bob Marley fans. And what he saw in those 2 hours began to loosen the chains he didn't even know he wore. To his left was a black family, a father telling his young son about Bob Marley's message, the mother laughing as the boy tried to imitate Bob's dance moves. To his right, a white couple held hands, swaying gently even before a single note was played. Behind him, a group of college students, black, white, Asian, Latino, talked about how Marley's music had helped them through heartbreak, depression, and confusion. The room buzzed with warmth, anticipation, and unity. The joy in the air was not something staged. It was real, alive, and shared. Derek tried to hold on to his anger. He repeated his mission in his mind like a mantra. But something inside him began to fracture. He had come expecting chaos, expecting division, expecting battles. Instead, he saw families, lovers, friends, strangers smiling at each other. The world he believed was rigged and broken didn't look broken at all. It looked healed. And that terrified him. At 8:30 p.m., the house lights went down. A roar rose from the crowd so loud it felt like a physical wave. Bob Marley stepped onto the stage and the entire arena erupted. Derek had seen photos of Bob before, but seeing him in person was entirely different. Marley didn't just walk, he seemed to glide. There was something calm, something powerful, something deeply centered in his presence, as if the chaos of the world simply avoided him. The band began playing Positive Vibration, and instantly, 15,000 people began moving as one. The arena wasn't just loud, it was alive. Music pulsed through the seats, through the walls, through Derek's chest. He tried not to react. He sat stiff, arms crossed, jaw clenched. To him, this man on stage was the enemy. But then Bob spoke. Between songs, Marley addressed the crowd with a clarity that sliced through the noise. His voice echoed across the arena, low but commanding. "The same people who enslaved Africans, who colonized Jamaica, who built their riches on suffering, they want you to believe that we are enemies, black and white, rich and poor. They want division, because divided people are easy to control." The arena fell silent. "But let me tell you the truth," Bob continued. "We are one people, one love, one heart, and when we come together, no system, no force, no hatred can stop us." The words hit Derek like unexpected blows. He felt something tightening in his chest. Something he immediately tried to suppress doubt. Something he had not felt in years. And then Bob began to sing War. The lyrics, drawn from Emperor Haile Selassie's United Nations speech, carried a weight Derek had never confronted. Until the philosophy that holds one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned. Everywhere is war. Each line challenged everything Derek believed. Each verse pulled apart the foundations of his worldview. He gripped his knees, willing himself to stay angry, but his grip slowly loosened. He looked around again. The black family, the white couple, the diverse students behind him. They weren't divided. They weren't enemies. They were singing the same words with the same hope. They were living the unity Derek had been taught to hate. For the first time in his adult life, Derek felt something he couldn't name. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was the unsettling suspicion that he might be wrong. Then came the moment he had been preparing for. During Exodus, Derek stood up. This was the cue. He was supposed to signal his friends, unfold the banner hidden under his jacket, and charge the stage. Everything had been rehearsed, everything planned, but his body refused to move. His hands wouldn't reach inside his jacket. His feet felt rooted to the floor. The music washed over him, filling the cracks in his armor, weakening everything he had built. And in that exact moment, something happened that Derek would remember for the rest of his life. Bob Marley looked directly at him. Not at the row, not at the section. At him. In an arena of 15,000 people, Bob's gaze locked onto Derek's eyes with impossible accuracy. It wasn't a casual glance. It wasn't random. It was steady, intentional, piercing. Derek felt exposed, as if Marley could see every dark corner of his mind. But what shook him most was what he didn't see in Bob's eyes. There was no anger, no judgment, no fear. There was recognition. There was understanding. There was compassion. Bob stepped toward the front of the stage while still singing, still pointing at Derek. The crowd noticed and fell silent, waiting for what would happen next. And then Bob changed the lyrics, singing directly to him. Brother, you're running and you're running and you're running away. But you can't run away from yourself. Derek froze. His friends waited for a signal that would never come. His breath caught in his throat. His entire identity shook. The words weren't just lyrics anymore, they were truth aimed right at him. And then Bob did something that completely shattered Derek. He smiled. Not a mocking smile, not a triumphant smile, but a soft, compassionate smile that said more than words ever could. I see you. I know why you're here. And I love you anyway. Tears rushed to Derek's eyes before he could stop them. He cried standing up. He cried sitting down. He cried through the rest of the song, unable to understand how a man he came to destroy could respond with such overwhelming love. Derek drove home from the concert in complete silence, the road stretching ahead like a long, dark confession he had no words for yet. The streetlights flickered across his windshield, and with each flash he saw the image of Bob Marley pointing at him. Not accusing, not damning, just seeing him, truly seeing him. For a man who had spent years hiding behind anger, behind ideology, behind a mask of superiority, that kind of recognition felt like being stripped naked. When Derek reached his house, he didn't turn on the lights. He walked straight to the small wooden chest he kept in his closet, the one filled with pamphlets, flags, photocopied manifestos, and hate group newsletters. Everything that had ever given him a false sense of identity. He sat on the floor, the chest open in front of him. His hands trembled as he picked up a booklet, something he had once carried proudly. Now the words felt hollow, childish, like they'd been written to trap men too broken to question anything. He whispered into the darkness, I can't live like this anymore. The moment the words left his mouth, something inside him shifted. Not peace and not yet one, but clarity. He stood up, carried the chest outside, and dumped every piece of paper, every symbol of hate into a trash bin. For a long moment he stared at the pile. He didn't burn it. He didn't crush it. He simply closed the lid and walked away. But the next morning, reality hit harder than any concert epiphany. His phone rang nonstop. Members of his group demanding answers. Why didn't you give the signal? What happened to you? Are you turning soft? Derek said only one sentence. I'm done. The silence on the other side of the line wasn't confusion. It was betrayal. Then came the consequences. Threats, isolation, whispers at his workplace, old friends cutting him off overnight. By the end of the week, Derek was fired from his job. Not because he'd become violent, but because his former group spread rumors that he was a traitor, a liability, a danger. For a moment, Derek wondered if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. But every time doubt crept in, he remembered Bob Marley's eyes. And that smile, the one that held compassion instead of judgment. That memory became his anchor. On Sunday, without understanding why, Derek drove to a church in Oakland, a place he'd never been, a community he knew nothing about. Yet something pulled him there, something deeper than curiosity. He sat in the back row, head down, feeling every pair of eyes on him. But instead of suspicion, he felt something unfamiliar. Acceptance. The pastor's voice filled the room like warm light. Redemption isn't the erasing of your past, he said. It's choosing to walk toward truth even when your past tries to drag you back. Those words shattered something inside Derek. He went to the pastor afterward and told him everything. The concert, the hate, the moment that broke him. When he finished, expecting judgment, the pastor simply placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Son, Bob Marley showed you love when you came with hate. Now your life must show others that same love." Derek nodded, tears silently rolling down his face. For the first time, he felt something he had never felt before. Hope. Derek didn't transform overnight. Change rarely works like lightning. It's slower, heavier, like a storm that begins far away and slowly moves across your entire life. He started volunteering at the church, sweeping floors, organizing food drives, helping repair community homes. At first, people kept their distance. They recognized him. They knew his past. But they also saw something broken in his eyes. Something unraveling, something searching. Weeks turned into months, and Derek kept showing up, quietly, consistently. And every time he doubted himself, every time he felt the weight of his old life pulling him backward, he remembered Bob Marley's voice singing directly to him. "You can't run away from yourself." Those words became a compass. Over time, Derek began meeting young people who were drifting toward the same darkness he had once lived in. He recognized the signs instantly. The anger, the confusion, the hunger for belonging. And for the first time in his life, he had something meaningful to say. He told them his story, not the polished version, not the softened version, the truth. He told them about the hate that poisoned him, about the lies he believed, about the moment everything shattered. At a reggae concert he attended for all the wrong reasons. Some kids listened, some didn't, but a few truly hurt him. And one by one, those few began stepping away from hate groups, quietly, fearfully, courageously. By 1985, Derek realized something profound. Bob Marley hadn't just saved him. Bob had given him a mission. So he dedicated his life to outreach programs, helping troubled youth, visiting schools, speaking at small gatherings. It wasn't glamorous work. It wasn't loud. But it mattered. Every young person he helped walk away from hate felt like laying another brick in the long road toward the man he wanted to become. He never pretended to be perfect. He never claimed to be healed. He simply carried the truth wherever he went. The truth that love, shown to the wrong person at the right moment, can rewrite an entire life. By the early 1990s, Derek's story began to spread quietly. A newspaper here, a church bulletin there. Groups invited him to speak. Not because he was famous, but because he was real. And each time he told the story, he returned to the same moment. The third row, the pointing hand, the smile full of compassion, the message that cracked open his soul. Yet something still weighed on him, unfinished. He had never been able to tell Bob Marley what happened. He had never thanked the man who changed everything with a song and a single look. 3 years after the concert, Derek wrote a long letter to Bob Marley's management. In the letter, he poured out everything, the hate he carried, the mission he came with the moment Bob sang to him, the transformation that followed. He didn't hold anything back. He didn't try to make himself look better. He simply told the truth. He mailed the letter not knowing if Bob would ever see it. He didn't. By the time the letter arrived, Bob Marley was already fighting cancer. Within months, Bob was gone. When Derek heard the news, he sat alone in his kitchen and cried. Not just for Bob, not just for the loss of a world icon, but because he would never have the chance to say the words he had carried for so long. You saved me when I came to destroy you." But even without hearing those words, Bob's influence continued shaping Derek's path. By the year 2000, Derek had helped more than 200 young people leave extremist groups. He had dismantled hate in quiet corners of America, one heart at a time. He didn't think of himself as a hero. He thought of himself as a man paying back a debt he could never fully repay. On February 6, 2001, what would have been Bob Marley's 56th birthday, Derek traveled to Jamaica. He went alone, carrying nothing but a small backpack in the memory of a smile that changed his life. At 9 Mile, he stood before Bob's mausoleum. The warm Jamaican breeze brushed against his skin. The air smelled of earth, music, and something eternal. He placed his hand on the stone and whispered, "I am not the man I was when I came to hurt you. I don't know if you knew what you did for me, but you gave me my life back." Tears streamed down his face, and he didn't wipe them away. That moment was his closure, his beginning, his promise. In the following years, Derek poured his entire soul into helping others escape hate. He created workshops, community programs, mentorship circles. His voice became a bridge between worlds that once seemed destined to clash. People listened because he wasn't preaching as a saint. He was confessing as a survivor. And just like Bob Marley, he believed one message above all. Love is not weakness. Love is the force that breaks chains. Love is the revolution that begins in a single heart. Today, Derek Mitchell is 73 years old. His hair has turned gray and time has softened the lines in his face. But his voice carries the same steady conviction it did the night everything changed. He runs a foundation called One Love Redemption, dedicated to fighting racism and extremism through education, conversation, and compassion. On the wall of his office, framed with quiet pride, hangs the concert poster from June 7, 1979, the night Bob Marley sang to him. People often ask Derek the same question. What did Bob Marley do to you that night? What magic words did he use to change your heart? Derek always gives the same answer. There were no magic words. There was only love. A kind of love I didn't deserve. A kind of love that saw through me. Bob didn't look at me and see an enemy. He looked at me and saw a brother. And when someone sees you as a brother at the very moment you see yourself as an enemy, it changes everything. Most people who were at the concert don't remember the man in the third row. There's no famous footage, no documentary record, no viral clip. The world moved on. But for Derek, and for the hundreds of lives touched by the path he chose afterward, that moment was a rebirth. Bob Marley died in 1981. But his message, unity, compassion, awakening, lives on in people like Derek Mitchell. People who walked into a room full of hate and walked out carrying love. The story of Derek isn't a story about a man saved by music. It's the story of a soul brought back to life by truth, by courage, by grace. A reminder that the smallest act of love, a look, a smile, a song, can redirect the entire path of a human being. And somewhere in the memory of that crowded arena, in the echo of Bob's voice singing, "You can't run away from yourself," there lives the quiet proof that even the darkest heart can be rewritten.